Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing very well.
Good.
And we have a couple items to go over, but mainly I'd like to bring up the subject of Assange. He's in the news, but he's been in there for how long now?
Yeah.
A good many years, and they're still going after him, and who knows what's going to happen. But the big thing now is, is there's two extraditions filed against him. One, we've been after him for a long time, which is pretty much over the top. But Sweden had been after him too, and they are wanting to extradite him, and that's an issue. And there's lots of pros and cons about what that means. But the whole issue is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
This whole idea that we are obsessed with this, and that especially if you come to the conclusion that he's probably pretty much of an honest journalism from Australia.
Yeah.
And of course, he revealed information that exposed, some of the things that we were doing, which we considered very positive, as well as when American citizens do this. But anyway, there's been tremendous effort to destroy this individual. And it's bipartisan. That's one thing for sure. He's a bad guy. And also, it's multinational.
Yeah.
I mean, how many governments have come forth? This idea that the idea that Ecuador had them in their embassy for a while didn't reveal a whole lot because their personnel, their president's changed, so he didn't get any protection. They're dumping him out. So there's really nobody out there that want to defend him. Yeah. But it is very much bipartisan. And once again, I think this bipartisanship is something that goes totally unnoticed.
Yeah.
Of course, I talk about it all the time because the leadership, Republican and Democrat Party, but multinational. When all the countries gang up on somebody, it sort of reminded me of how it's been recorded in history that when the kings of old were challenged by their citizens, the kings that they were fighting would gather together because they always wanted to stop an uprising because they didn't want to have it. And I think there's a little bit of that. And of course, we have the power and the pressure and the sanctions, so we're still in charge also, although we're getting weaker. But it is also another example of what happened yesterday of this bipartisanship, anything to distract from the real issues that we talk about, foreign policy and war. And that has to do with this letter the members of Congress wrote, 400 of them, sends this letter to Trump and said, keep the troops there. We can't leave. We got to protect our friends, and our friends are endangered, and there are terrorists out there. And Trump, probably made an honest effort to bring the troops home. But Republicans and Democrats are alike. So, and I see it as they're not much interested in dealing with our policies that we think are important, the total bankruptcy of the country. But anyway, this is in the news, but it gives us a chance to talk about the injustices that have been, given to Assange, and so few people defending him. I keep thinking, wake up, civil libertarians, where are you?
Yeah.
You're sound asleep. We should hear from you. There are some now. There are more groups now than there were a year or so ago. But maybe what's going on right now legally, maybe there's going to be something in there that will come out as a positive. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, he's being held in the British Gulag, the Balmoral prison, 50 weeks for jumping bail. He jumped bail because he was about to be extradited to the U.S. They gave him the maximum. They threw the book at him. His conditions, apparently from people that have visited him, are horrific. He's being treated badly, like something out of a third world country. But the real issue that's jumped out at us and why we wanted to talk about today is this new information that basically the Ecuadorian authorities threw open Assange's doors and says, come on into his quarters and take anything you want. And so the U.S. has gone in there. They've taken his manuscripts. They've taken his legal defense papers. They've taken his medical records and all of his electronic equipment. And you can imagine if you're trying to build a case, and right now the case is just conspiracy because he helped Chelsea Manning hide her identity as she was acting as a whistleblower. But if that's all you've got, all of a sudden you have this treasure trove of all the stuff about him. If it's not there, trust me, it's going to be planted.
Right, and the fact that they've way overstepped their bounds with legal decency, that's where I sort of have a slight hope that maybe this will be a technicality. Remember, Daniel Ellsberg didn't exactly get ruled totally innocent. There was a technicality there that got the New York Times, off the hook, and he didn't have to go to prison. So that maybe this will be something, but they're bound to determine to never let this man see the light of day, in the sense that even if he's not, in prison for 10 more years or something, they are going to really make it pretty tough for Assange to live a decent life. They've already essentially destroyed his life, but he so far is holding up, and I would say Chelsea Manning's holding up pretty good too. Boy, she first she gets in prison, and then she gets a pardon, and now they're back trying to force her to testify, and she's resisted that. So she's a pretty strong character too.
Yeah, absolutely, she's back in for the second time because she refuses to testify in a way that would help make the case against Assange. But I think without being too dramatic, if you look down history and you look up villains, I honestly think that Lenin Moreno is going to go down as one of the real villains of history, because he's the one that obviously he's the president of Ecuador, and it's under his administration now. He's the second president. President Correa is the one who gave him asylum. Now Moreno comes on. He needs a little bit of money, so he has a little talk with the IMF, right? And right after they give him this $4.2 billion loan, then all of a sudden he decides that Assange must go, opens the doors. But here's what he did that is particularly treacherous. Last Friday, he made an emergency declaration. He declared that the rights of prisoners are to be suspended in the area of, quote, inviolability of correspondence, freedom of association and assembly, and freedom of information. Executive Decree 741. This is what opened the door for them to open the door for U.S. prosecutors to go and have a look at all of Assange's stuff.
And my guess is that they're not going to back off either. They're going to do everything, and we'll continue to use the bully pulpit to do it. Money, sanctions, and all other kinds of things. And we'll probably get our way, but maybe there'll be something that will come through that, maybe somebody will come up with decency. Some people see it as an advantage for him to go to Sweden, and because they don't think they have a case.
Yeah, they already dropped it.
And then, if he has any relative freedom, he should never attend a country that is in U.S. jurisdiction.
Yeah. Doesn't leave many.
And that's a problem. But maybe the temporary reprieve, it would be slightly better than just putting him out on the streets and have the U.S. officials pick him up. That'd be just practically suicide.
And according to his colleagues in WikiLeaks, he had expected, and we'd heard in rumors for the few weeks up until he was actually arrested, that he expected to be arrested. He is a computer security expert. That was his career, really, before a journalist and while being a journalist. So they say that he scrubbed his computers pretty thoroughly. And so they've warned, WikiLeaks has warned, anything they find on that, you can bet, is planted. Jason Ditz at antiwar.com makes a pretty interesting observation that because he's now only facing a conspiracy charge, which is kind of a made-up thing in a way, but the U.S. wants to throw the book at him. But if they throw the book at him too soon, the UK is going to have a political liability in going ahead and handing him over. So they're holding on to this stuff. Once they get him, they're going to discover in his papers, in his computer, all kinds of new things to charge him with.
See, they want some type of a trial. They want some type of a conviction to so-called justify what they've been already doing. And that always amazes me that tyrants are that way. They just don't pick you up and say, do this, but many times they will put you through a trial and make you confess, beat you to death, and then you confess. Aha, see, he was guilty, and then they go and execute him. And there's a little bit of that mentality that goes on here. They will put him through all this, and they're going to find some technicality. Say, see, he is guilty. He's guilty. We found it in the computer, even if it was alive. But on the surface, it'll look legal. But the biggest problem is the way we treat a whistleblower,
Yeah.
and also the tolerance of our people and our society and our Congress for this. Why is there not daily speeches on the House floor?
Yeah.
You know, talking about this issue. Instead, they're talking about issues why Trump must keep the troops there.
Yeah.
I thought, by the way, that only the president had the power to move the troops around. I mean, he's that's one thing he's allowed to do.
Yeah.
The ones who are saying you must go to war, or a president goes to war without a declaration, they're the ones who are violating it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a normal, decent society, including what the U.S. is supposed to be, the prosecution is bound by law to hand over all information on the case to the defense, including exculpatory evidence, evidence that could get the person off. You talk about turning this whole sort of Western system of justice on its head when the prosecution gets to go there and take the entire defense case, read it up, bone up, and get ready for it before the trial. This is more like a show trial, a Soviet trial, than a Western trial. It's just incredible.
Well, all I know is that we should do our very best, to expose this, and we have. I guess we haven't visited this subject for several months, but this is new news right now, and a new opportunity because it is in the media, but unfortunately they're reading it from a perspective which is almost exactly opposite of what we're saying, that he deserves a fair treatment. And besides, where does the jurisdiction come from? If they're not trying him for some type of a violent act against a government or something, they have no jurisdiction whatsoever. He's a journalist. He wrote something. He wrote something. And he told. The question should be, did he tell the truth?
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Has he told the truth? No. And the problem is he did tell the truth.
That's the problem.
And
Yeah.
there's the crime. Telling the truth. Truth is treason in Empire Lies,
Exactly.
but I don't know what you call it when a foreigner does it. You know.
It literally is, charging him with treason when he's not even an American. It's crazy. But I would just conclude by saying this is the example. We see Chelsea Manning back in jail. They are not going to let her go. They're not going to give her a moment of peace. They're not going to give Julian Assange a moment of peace. This is what happens when you really cross what Bumper Hornberger calls the national security state. When you really hurt them, when you do damage, they are relentless and they will never let you go. And I can tell you these are the themes that we're going to explore in our August conference. We just finished our Good Spring Conference, our August conference in D.C. on October 24th, save the date. This is going to be still a hot topic then, and so we do hope that you will keep that in mind and come join us then. And also, please don't forget to subscribe to the Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Our numbers are rising, and you subscribing helps us get the word out.
Very good. And I think the main message here is the lack of respect for civil liberties is essentially universal. You'd think there'd be one or two or three other countries in the world that would say, come here and we'll take care of you. And the real trap that happens is, what if there's a country that used to be a communist, and then they say, well, we'll be more tolerant, and honestly be more tolerant with views like this. Oh no, you can't do it, or you get painted and labeled you must be a communist because this country is helping you. But it's to me just really sad that there's so little defense and the governments are so well controlled. This is why I actually believe that the bankruptcy that's coming is going to be very good. It's going to be cleansing. The military will have to back off. The welfare state has to back off. People will have to go back to work. Debt will not be sacred, that you can buy anything you want, that people will be subject to our authority because we have the power over the currency and the power over a reserve currency, and we can throw our weight around. So that it will be, and it has to be liquidated and changed. The big question is, are we going to have enough people who know what civil liberties mean, what it means to have a right to your life, and not be intimidated by government? And then if you need judges, have the rule of law. The one thing is I complain about the distraction about all this nonsense going over domestically, but in one way that's been helpful because it's proven to be lacking in seeking out justice, and that's okay to find out, well, there is no justice in the system, but of course it's almost like well, one time the Democrats have the upper end and they throw their weight around legally, then the Republicans come in and they do it. And then then when they quit yelling and screaming at each other during the day, they go out and have a drink, and then they sign on to a letter demanding why our friends in the Middle East need us to go in and stay in and keep our troops in Syria. You know, they're jihadists there, and there's a great danger there, and we have to go there. So sorting this out is not easy, but it is something that we have to do, because there will be an opportunity to present our philosophy of limited government and a world that looks carefully and makes an effort to support the whole principle of non-aggression. That the person that's won, that is wrong, is the one that is the initiator of violence. And unfortunately, and I feel badly, that at times we have to talk about, I believe the United States does that too often, and that is what is discouraging. But it's the universal temptation by many men, in few in numbers, who want to take over governments and become powerful, that they can do this at will, whether it's in a monetary system, spending, domestic control. This is what has to be challenged. And this is also the reason the Ron Paul Liberty Report and the Institute for Peace and Prosperity is in business. We're in business for this very reason, to try to get more people to look into that. And the best I can say is a reflection in our conferences and our efforts. Our numbers grow slowly but surely, but it's not just a numbers game. It is the quality of people who want to influence others, and there I would say that we have room to be optimistic. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.